November in Chicago always brought a biting, bone-chilling wind sweeping off Lake Michigan and into the city. On the 42nd floor of a downtown skyscraper, heavy raindrops lashed against the floor-to-ceiling tempered glass, shattering and trailing down like tears no one bothered to wipe away. Nathan Hayes stood with his arms crossed before the window, his cold gaze fixed on the tiny specks of traffic lights below. At 32, he was the flawless embodiment of a modern American dream. A brilliant civil engineer and architect, CEO of a rising architectural firm, owner of a suburban Oak Park mansion, and single father to a 6-year-old angel Mia. The bespoke charcoal Italian suit hugged his solid frame, concealing every trace of a childhood spent growing up in the most dilapidated slums of the South Side. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Chloe, his assistant with horn-rimmed glasses, stepped in timidly. "Sorry to disturb you, boss," Chloe said, holding a stack of files in a small, discolored envelope. "Financial reports from accounting, and..." This arrived again. Nathan's eyes immediately froze upon seeing the small envelope. The smudged postmark clearly read the South Side area. Without opening it, he knew exactly what was inside. A Dollar Tree birthday card with no handwritten message, and a crumpled $10 bill. For 15 years, it hadn't missed a single month, even when it wasn't his birthday. "Throw it in the shredder, Chloe. I told you not to bring this garbage into my office," Nathan growled, trying to suppress the disgust churning in his stomach. But Chloe hesitated. "This is from family." "I don't have any family sending mail from that neighborhood. Throw it away." Chloe hastily stepped back, nodded, and pulled the door shut. The expansive office sank back into silence, but Nathan's mind was already churning. That cheap envelope was like a claw ripping through the perfect facade he had built with blood and tears over the past 20 years. It dragged him out of the luxurious 42nd floor, sending him free-falling straight onto the soaking wet asphalt of that fateful night when he was 12. In Nathan's memory, it was pouring rain that night too. The blinding red and blue flashes of police cruisers swept across the dilapidated brick walls. The beat-up family sedan had its front end completely smashed in, billowing thick smoke, and there, Will Hayes, the man he once called father, was pinned against the hood by 2 police officers, handcuffed behind his back. The stench of cheap whiskey, pungent drugs, and rusted iron pierced the 12-year-old boy's nose. The heart-wrenching scream of Catherine, his mother, still echoed in his ears. "What the hell did you do, Will? Are you trying to kill this whole family?" Will didn't say a word. His bloodshot, empty eyes stared at Nathan before he was shoved into the back of the squad car. The American justice system showed no mercy for those charges. Felony DUI and possession. Will was convicted, but the real sentence fell on the heads of those left behind. The family went bankrupt from restitution payments. Catherine, a fragile woman, had to work 3 jobs simultaneously, cleaning hotel rooms in the morning, serving at a diner in the evening, and taking in sewing late into the night, just to keep Nathan from being thrown into the violent foster care system. She never complained, always smiling and telling Nathan, "I'm fine, son. Mom's a superhero, but the human body is not made of steel." When Nathan turned 18, holding a full-ride college acceptance letter in his hand, Catherine collapsed from a stroke right by the restaurant sink. She passed away in a hospital bed, reduced to skin and bones. Since the day he buried his mother, using donations from neighbors, Nathan had sworn a vicious oath before her gray headstone. He had no father. Will Hayes was a monster who had drained his mother's life force and destroyed his family. When Will was released from prison, Nathan changed his phone number, moved away, and severed all ties. He strictly forbade the name Will from ever appearing in his life. Later, Even after getting married and having Mia, Nathan would rather hire the most expensive nannies than ever let his daughter know she had a grandfather living less than 30 miles away. To Nathan, the existence of Will Hayes was a cancerous tumor that needed to be completely excised. But right now, standing before his office window, Nathan was facing a different tragedy. The ringing phone snapped him back to reality. It was his lawyer. "Nathan, it's worse than we thought," the aging lawyer's voice echoed through the speaker. "The FBI and the IRS are officially involved. Marcus, your former partner, embezzling client funds and fleeing the country has escalated into a federal criminal case. Because you're the CEO and a cosigner on the accounts, you bear joint liability." Nathan squeezed his eyes shut, massaging his throbbing temples. "How much do I need so the court doesn't freeze my assets and you keep me from standing trial as a suspect?" $50,000. That's the minimum retainer fee for me to mobilize the strongest legal team to protect you against the freeze order. And I need it by this Friday afternoon. Otherwise, by early next week, the firm will be seized, your personal accounts will be frozen, and you could lose custody of Mia if you're indicted. $50,000. In the past, that was merely the cost of one of his ski trips to Aspen. But now, with company accounts under fierce audit, credit cards locked, and his elite friends simultaneously turning their backs for fear of implication, that sum was like an insurmountable mountain. Nathan hung up. He looked down at his trembling hands. He had sworn never to let Mia experience the feeling of losing her home and family like he did back then. He couldn't let her step into the foster care system. He had to save this home, even if it meant selling his soul to the devil. And in his most desperate moment, the image of that cheap envelope with the South Side postmark surfaced in his mind. The trailer park on Chicago's South Side emerged under the miserable drizzle like a festering wound forgotten by the city. Rusty mobile homes sat crammed together, overhead wires tangled like a spiderweb, and the flickering light from the broken neon sign of a cheap convenience store created a suffocating atmosphere. Nathan's luxury SUV slid through the mud, stopping in front of Lot 42. It had been 15 years since he walked away. He never expected the man to still be living in this rotting place. The smell of damp garbage, cheap cigarettes, and rust wafted around the trailer. Nathan took a deep breath, hastily threw on his black trench coat, and stepped out of the vehicle. His polished leather shoes sank into the muddy puddle. He raised his hand and knocked hard on the flimsy aluminum door. 3 minutes passed. A lock clicked, and the door slowly creaked open. William Hayes stood there. Nathan's chest involuntarily tightened, skipping a beat. The tall, muscular man with the hearty laugh from his memories before the age of 12 was gone. Standing before him was a frail old man, hunched over, with thinning, coarse gray hair and a face deeply etched by time and grueling labor. Will was wearing a faded navy blue janitor's uniform. Embroidered on the chest pocket were the words "Night Shift." When he recognized who was standing at his door, Will's cloudy eyes widened, his vein-bulging hands gripping the doorframe so tightly, his knuckles turned stark white. "Nathan," Will's voice was raspy, crumbling like the sound of crushed dry leaves. "Is it you?" "Don't use that tone with me," Nathan cut in coldly, his fierce defensiveness flaring up to overpower a fleeting pang of pity. "Can I come in? Or are you going to leave me standing out here?" Will clumsily stepped back, opening the door wider. "Come in. The place is a bit messy. Let me make you some coffee." Inside the trailer was a cramped, gloomy space, reeking of damp mold and mothballs. The furnishings consisted of nothing more than a foldable cot, a bulky 90s CRT television, and a tiny dining table. Nathan stood in the middle of the room, finding it hard to breathe. whether it was suffocating from the poverty or from the presence of his greatest enemy. He couldn't tell. "I didn't come here to reminisce, Mr. Hayes." Nathan cut straight to the chase, while Will was tremblingly pouring boiling water into a chipped mug. "I'm in trouble. Massive legal trouble. My partner committed fraud, and if I don't have $50,000 by Friday to hire a lawyer, I'll lose everything, the firm, the house, and most importantly, custody of Mia." Will's movements halted. Boiling water spilled over, landing on the back of his hand, but he didn't seem to feel the pain. "Mia, how is she? Is she doing well?" "She has nothing to do with you." Nathan raised his voice. "I need money. I know you have nothing but this wretched body, but I have no one else to turn to. You can borrow from someone in this park, borrow from loan sharks, whatever. Consider it your compensation for my mother's death. Save your granddaughter." Will turned around, his aged face revealing sheer agony. He opened his mouth to say something, but then clamped it shut, his eyes averted, looking down at the table. Just then, Nathan's gaze accidentally swept across the cramped dining table. Sticking out from under a glass ashtray was the corner of an envelope with the Chase Bank logo. It bore the distinctive bright red lettering, "Chase Private Client Trust Account Statement." The instinct of a businessman made Nathan curious. He shoved the ashtray aside and picked up the paper. Will lunged forward in panic, but it was too late. Striking Nathan's eyes were the words, "Beneficiary, Nathan Hayes. Trustee, William Hayes. Current balance, $650,432.18. The air in the room froze. $650,000. Over $500,000. In the flesh, sitting on a piece of black and white paper in this rotting slum. Nathan's head snapped up, his breathing ragged. His first sensation was an explosive ray of hope. He was saved. But in the very next second, a colossal fire of outrage flared up, incinerating everything. "What the hell is this?" Nathan roared, waving the statement in Will's face. "You have over $500,000. How long have you had this money, huh?" Will backed away, his lips trembling violently. "Nathan, give that paper to me. You can't touch it." "Can't touch it." Nathan's eyes went bloodshot. He lunged, grabbing Will by the collar of his uniform, slamming the old man hard against the aluminum wall. "You have $500,000 hidden here. And my mother had to die working herself to exhaustion to pay for your bastard sins. And she didn't even have enough money to buy decent blood pressure medication. What kind of animal are you, Will?" "You don't understand," Will wheezed, squeezing his eyes shut. Offering no resistance, he let his taller son choke him by the collar. "That money, it can't be taken out. It's locked by law." "Lies," Nathan hissed through gritted teeth, tears of bitter resentment welling up. "It's a trust fund. I'm no stranger to the law. You're the trustee. You can absolutely request a disbursement or change the terms if you wanted to save me. I only need $50,000. If you don't help me, Mia will end up in foster care. Do you understand?" The truth under American law was that this was an irrevocable trust. From the exact moment the funds were deposited, Will had completely stripped himself of any control over that money. He couldn't withdraw a single cent, couldn't alter the terms. He had created it with his blood sweat, and by selling away his lifespan with one sole purpose: to absolutely shield that money from all legal risks, bankruptcy, and any of Nathan's future creditors. If he spoke up now, Nathan would force him to find a loophole, and that could shatter the legal armor protecting the funds he had built over 20 years. But how could a son on the edge of the abyss stay calm enough to listen to those dry legal explanations? I cannot give you a single cent from this money." Nathan Will opened his eyes, looking straight at his son. His gaze now held no trembling, only a terrifyingly cold resolve. Go home. You're a man, you caused this mess. You figure a way out yourself. Nathan's hands dropped to his sides. All newly kindled hope had been mercilessly shattered. He looked at the man before him, as if looking at the most cruel, vicious demon in the world. Someone who would rather hoard a fortune while living like a rat in the slums, watch his wife die of overwork, and see his granddaughter thrown into the streets, rather than open his purse. I made a mistake coming here. Nathan rebuttoned his trench coat, taking 2 steps back. His voice was now nothing but sharp shards of ice. My mother died because of you. Your bastardry today only proves it. You are not my father. I hope you take that filthy money to your grave, Will Hayes. Don't ever expect to see Mia's face, not even at your funeral. Nathan spun on his heel, strode out the flimsy door, and slammed it shut, ignoring the rain outside. He didn't look back once. Inside the wretched trailer, as the sound of the SUV's engine faded and completely vanished into the night, Will Hayes slowly slid down the aluminum wall, dropping to his knees on the freezing floor. His rough hands clutched tightly at his left chest, which was spasming with sharp bolts of pain. He bowed his head to the floor, letting out no cry but murky, salty tears just kept pouring out, falling and mixing with the puddle of rainwater his son had just left behind. 3 days after the explosive argument at the trailer park, the deadline to pay the $50,000 legal retainer was down to a matter of hours. Nathan was on the verge of losing his mind. He had knocked on the door of every bank, called people who once declared themselves blood brothers at banquet tables, but everyone turned him down the moment they heard he was under FBI investigation. At 2:00 a.m. on Thursday, as Nathan slumped over his desk, cluttered with paperwork, his phone buzzed violently. The caller ID read, Cook County General Hospital. Excuse me, is this Mr. Nathan Hayes? The voice on the other end was a deep, professional female voice. I'm calling from the emergency room. We have a patient named William Hayes who was just brought in. You are listed as the sole next of kin in his medical records. I have no relation to that man. Call someone else, Nathan snapped, about to hang up. Sir, the patient suffered a massive myocardial infarction while at work. His heart already stopped once in the ambulance. He is currently in a deep coma and needs a legal representative to sign the consent form for an emergency coronary artery bypass surgery. If you don't come, we will be forced to delay the surgery pending a court order, and he likely won't make it through the night. Nathan's hand gripped the phone until his knuckles turned stark white. A chaotic surge of emotions churned in his chest. The hatred for the selfish man clutching $500,000 was still there, burning fiercely. He should have just ignored him, let him take that filthy money to his grave, exactly as he had cursed. But the image of someone dying utterly alone in a hospital bed suddenly triggered the memory of the day his mother passed away. Nathan took a deep breath, gritting his teeth. I'll be right there. Cook County Hospital at 3:00 a.m. was drenched in a stark, sterile fluorescent light. The pungent smell of antiseptic assaulted Nathan's nostrils, making him shiver slightly. The night shift doctor, with dark circles under his eyes, pulled Nathan to a corner of the hallway. The situation is very grim, Mr. Hayes, the doctor said, flipping through the medical chart. His heart muscle has suffered severe damage from prolonged overexertion and untreated hypertension. We will do our absolute best, but you need to mentally prepare yourself for the worst-case scenario. Nathan didn't reply. He merely gave a slight nod, his face as expressionless as carved stone. Because he is in the intensive care unit, ICU, personal belongings are not allowed inside. According to protocol, we must hand them over to you. A nurse approached with a small cart, handing Nathan a clear Ziploc bag. Nathan took the bag indifferently. Holding it in his hand, he walked over to a row of empty waiting chairs and collapsed into one. Through the plastic, he could see the things that belonged to Will Hayes's world. A battered digital Casio watch with a broken strap, a rusty set of house keys, and a frayed leather wallet with bursting seams. Nathan opened the Ziploc bag and pulled out the wallet. A morbid curiosity and a sliver of fragile hope regarding information on the $650,000 trust fund urged him to open it. Inside the cash compartment, it was empty. Not even a single $1 bill. There were only a few crumpled bus ticket stubs and a janitorial ID badge. But in the clear ID window, where people usually keep family photos, Nathan's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Resting obediently inside was a tiny newspaper clipping, meticulously cut out and hand-laminated. The grainy black and white photo showed a little girl hugging the championship trophy from the Oak Park Elementary. Spelling bee, it was Mia. Will had quietly cut it out from the community news section of the local paper. The edges of the photo were faded, proving he had caressed it thousands of times with his rough fingers. The man Nathan had strictly forbidden from coming anywhere near his daughter had carried her image close to his heart every single day, through every freezing night shift. Nathan swallowed hard, his throat feeling intensely bitter. He hastily flipped to another compartment to escape the creeping sense of guilt. His finger brushed against a bulky metal object in a zippered pocket. He unzipped it, a long, brass key with a sharp serial number engraved on it. Anyone living in America knew the shape of this key. It was the key to a bank safe deposit box. Accompanying the key was a faded yellow sticky note, with frantic, trembling handwriting scribbled in blue ink. "Give to Nathan, if I don't make it." Nathan's eyes remained glued to the words. His breathing quickened. A bank safe deposit box. A dying wish. The $650,000 trust fund. Everything was connecting. Will had said the money was locked by law, unable to be withdrawn. But if Will died, the trust fund would automatically be dispersed to the beneficiary. And this key was the answer to what was hidden, or perhaps the legal documents for him to claim that money without it being frozen by creditors. Suddenly, from the end of the hallway, the double doors of the ICU burst open. The blaring medical alarm, code blue, shrieked, tearing through the silence of the night. Doctors and nurses scrambled frantically inside. "Patient in bed 4 is coding. Prepare the defibrillator." A doctor's shout echoed into the hallway. Nathan shot up to his feet, the wallet slipping and dropping onto the marble floor with a sharp thud. His hand gripped the brass key so tightly it drew blood. Behind those doors, the man he had just cursed to die was truly standing on the precipice of death. If Will died tonight, Nathan would have the money to save everything. But why? Deep within his chest right now, was there an absolute terror, empty and bone-chillingly cold. The piercing beep of the defibrillator lasted exactly 50 seconds, but to Nathan, it felt like a century. When the lead doctor stepped out of the ICU, his forehead drenched in sweat, he removed his mask and exhaled. He has temporarily passed the critical phase. But his brain was deprived of oxygen for too long, compounded by severe exhaustion. He is in a deep coma. Now, everything depends on the patient's will to live. Nathan stood frozen in the hallway, his hand gripping the brass key so tightly it left deep red indentations on his palm. At the crack of dawn that day, the moment the tempered glass doors of the downtown Chicago Chase Bank branch opened, he was already there. The branch manager examined the key, then verified the legal information from the system. "Mr. William Hayes registered you as the sole heir with access to this safe deposit box in the event of his incapacitation. Please follow me." Nathan was led down to the basement, stepping into the safe deposit vault with its cold, steel-reinforced walls. The manager inserted the bank's key into the first lock, and Nathan inserted Will's key into the second. A heavy clack echoed. Iron box number 402 was pulled out and placed on a mahogany table in a private viewing room. The door closed, leaving Nathan alone with the secrets of the man he hated most in the world. Nathan's hands trembled as he opened the lid. There were no stacks of cash or gold bars as often seen in movies. Inside, there were only two neatly arranged file folders. He picked up the first file. The cover clearly read, Declaration of Irrevocable Spendthrift Trust. Flipping through each legal page, the eyes of a businessman like Nathan quickly scanned the terms. The trust was established 15 years ago, the exact year he cut all ties with Will. The sole beneficiary, Nathan Hayes. Reaching the disbursement clause, Nathan's breath caught in his throat. Under U.S. law, to protect this money from the risks of bankruptcy, divorce, or civil lawsuits against the beneficiary, the grantor, Will, had completely stripped himself of all control over the assets. The bold text struck his eyes. The trustee, William Hayes, has no right to withdraw funds, no right to alter the terms, and is not permitted to utilize any funds from this trust in any form whatsoever. Nathan was stunned. That rainy night at the trailer park, when he was screaming for $50,000, Will truly couldn't take that money out. If he had tried to find a loophole to withdraw money for Nathan, the irrevocable nature of the trust would be broken. At that moment, the entire $650,000 would instantly become an asset under Nathan's current ownership and be immediately frozen and seized by the FBI and his creditors. Will had refused him, enduring the most vicious curses, not because he was selfish, but because he was using his very life to protect the final layer of legal armor saving his son's life. Tucked between the contract pages were faded receipts. They weren't standard bank deposit slips. They were payment vouchers from blood plasma donation centers, contracts for toxic night shift janitorial work, and most horrifyingly, certificates of participation in high-risk clinical drug trials from pharmaceutical companies. That $650,000 didn't fall from the sky. It was converted from every drop of blood, every cell, and the very lifespan of Will Hayes. Nathan felt as if his chest had been struck by a sledgehammer. Tears began to well up, blurring the numbers on the receipts. But the true shock was still lying in wait at the bottom of the box. A sealed brown envelope, stamped on the outside by the public defender's office. The date on the envelope was from 20 years ago. Nathan tore open the seal. Inside was a yellowed, typewritten letter from attorney Robert Vance, the man who had defended Will, along with an unofficial copy of the police accident report. He scanned the words on the letter, and his world completely collapsed. Will, as your attorney, I vehemently oppose your taking this plea deal. The hospital's blood tests clearly prove the alcohol and drugs were in Catherine's system, your wife's, not yours. She is suffering from severe depression and substance abuse. If the truth comes out, she will spend at least 10 years in prison. You dragging her to the passenger seat and putting yourself in the driver's seat to take the fall is a foolish sacrifice. You will carry a felony record and lose custody of your child. The boy, Nathan, will be thrown into the foster care system if both you and your wife lose guardianship. The paper slipped from Nathan's hands, fluttering down to the wooden floor. His brain seemed to stop working. Every memory rushed back screaming, tearing at each other. That rainy night 20 years ago, his mother screaming, "What the hell did you do, Will?" That wasn't a reprimand for causing the accident. It was a panic-stricken scream upon seeing Will wiping her blood off the steering wheel and handcuffing himself in her place. His mother, the woman he worshipped like a saint, the one for whom he had built a towering monument of pride to protect her memory, was the very cause of all the tragedy. She loved him. She worked herself to exhaustion to raise him afterward, but on that fateful night, she was the one who had strangled the family's future. And Will Hayes, the man spat upon by the whole world, by his own flesh and blood, called an animal, a scum, had quietly cleaned up that wreckage. He took the criminal sentence upon himself to ensure his son had a perfect mother, to keep his son from being thrown into an orphanage. He lived in the shadows of the slums, drained his last drops of blood to leave his son a fortune for protection, and silently carried this bitter injustice to his grave, solely because he didn't want his son to suffer the pain of a shattered idol. I hope you take that filthy money to your grave. Don't ever expect to see Mia's face, not even at your funeral. The curse from the night before echoed in Nathan's mind, like daggers shredding his heart. No, oh God, what have I done? Nathan collapsed onto the freezing floor of the bank vault. He lunged for the receipts smeared with blood and sweat, clutching them tightly to his chest. Sobs tore from the throat of the 32-year-old man, an agonizing, remorseful, and desperate scream of a child who just realized he had personally stabbed the heart of the only person in the world who loved him unconditionally. Nathan didn't remember how he gathered that pile of papers, nor how he walked out of the Chase Bank vault. His mind was blank, leaving only a thick, buzzing sound. Ignoring the sympathetic looks of the bank staff, he rushed out onto the street, threw himself into his SUV, and slammed on the gas. The car tore through Chicago's blinding rain, speeding toward Cook County General Hospital, the firm, the FBI, the asset freeze, the embezzling partner. All the things that had been life or death to him just yesterday meant absolutely nothing now. In Nathan's head right now, there was only one thought, screaming until his throat burned, "Don't die. Please don't die. Wait for me." But when Nathan burst through the doors of the intensive care unit, ICU, the comforting smile he desperately sought on the chief doctor's face did not appear. Instead, there was a slow shake of the head and eyes heavy with helplessness. "We have done everything we could, Mr. Hayes." The doctor took off his glasses, gently rubbing the bridge of his nose. "The bypass surgery was performed, but his heart has endured too much damage over too long a period. His kidneys are showing signs of failure. He remains in a deep coma, frankly. His condition is deteriorating very rapidly. You should prepare yourself for the worst. Spend this time with him." Those words struck Nathan's head like a death sentence. He stepped into the hospital room, his legs heavy as lead. The stark white, sterile ICU room was filled only with the soulless beep, beep of the heart monitor piercing the space. Will Hayes lay there, swallowed up in a tangle of wires and tubes, an endotracheal tube shoved deep down his throat. The giant of a man who used to carry him on his shoulders, running along the shores of Lake Michigan, was now just a withered shell, as fragile as a dying leaf, ready to fall from the branch. Nathan pulled up a chair and slumped down next to the hospital bed. He reached out, hesitated, then grasped Will's hand. A brutally rough sensation transmitted through his skin. These hands were covered in a lattice of scars, with calluses so cracked they bled from industrial cleaning chemicals, from shifts down in the mines, from the needles drawing plasma to sell for cash. These hands had clawed at dirt and rocks, endured society's contempt, and the curses of his own flesh and blood, just to patch the sky back together for him. "I know everything." Nathan bowed his head against the edge of the bed, his voice breaking. "I saw Attorney Vance's file. I saw the police report. Why didn't you say anything? Why did you silently endure everything? Why would you rather let me hate you to the bone than tell the truth about Mom?" There was no answer. Only the slow, exhausted heartbeat displayed on the monitor. Will had locked that secret away for 20 years, and now he seemed intent on taking it to his grave, forever denying Nathan the chance to utter a single word of apology. 3 days passed. Nathan didn't leave the hospital room for a single step. His expensive suit was crumpled, his beard stubbly. He looked as haggard as a vagrant. During those 3 days, his law firm called. They informed him that thanks to the legal documentation of the irrevocable trust, his money was absolutely shielded from the FBI's freeze order. A portion of that money was legally dispersed to pay the fines and save the firm from the brink of bankruptcy, keeping both the house and custody of Mia. Will's plan had succeeded flawlessly. His sacrifice was so complete it was cruel. But Nathan didn't feel relieved at all. He would rather lose everything, rather end up on the streets, than pay the price with the life of the father lying motionless before him. On the 4th night, a storm hit Chicago. Roaring thunder shook the hospital windows. Lightning tore across the sky, casting a blinding white glare into the room. The sudden crack of thunder made Nathan jerk his head up. The scene outside the window suddenly triggered a distant drawer of memories from when he was 5 years old. It was a stormy night then, too. Little Nathan was terrified, curled up in his blanket, screaming every time lightning slashed across the sky. And then a large, sturdy pair of arms, reeking of motor oil and cheap soap, had enveloped him. Will patted his son's small back, and with a warm, deep voice, he began humming an old nursery rhyme to drown out the thunder. Now, in the middle of this freezing hospital room, Nathan's tears poured down, soaking the bedsheets. His hand gripped Will's tightly. His lips trembled, and from deep within his suffocating chest, a hoarse voice, interrupted by choked sobs, rang out. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Tears streamed into the bitter corners of his mouth. Nathan buried his face in his father's rough hand, crying like an abandoned child. "You make me happy when skies are gray." The singing was swallowed up amid the ticking of the machines. Nathan felt himself sinking to the absolute bottom of despair. He was really going to lose him. He was going to live the rest of his life with a sentence of conscience that would never be pardoned. "You'll never know, dear, how much I love you." Nathan looked up with bloodshot eyes at Will's motionless face. He pressed the old man's ice-cold hand to his cheek, gathering the last remnants of his strength to utter the final line. "Please don't take my sunshine away." He squeezed his eyes shut, waiting for eternal silence. But then, a beep sounded. Not the slow, steady rhythm from before. The EKG monitor suddenly showed a slight fluctuation. Nathan froze. A rough, scarred finger resting against his cheek twitched slightly. The movement was as fragile as a hallucination, but it was real. Nathan held his breath, his eyes wide open, staring unblinkingly at Will's face. Beneath the thin, closed eyelids, the old man's eyeballs began to move. A fleeting grimace appeared on the deeply wrinkled forehead, and then, from the corner of the eye bruised by IV lines, a hot, crystal-clear teardrop slowly seeped out, rolling down onto the pillow. He had heard it. From the deepest depths of the coma, the father's soul was still struggling to respond to his son's cries. "Doctor! Where's the doctor?" Nathan screamed, bursting through the door into the hallway, his voice echoing across the entire floor. "He's crying." His hand moved. As the doctors rushed in, Nathan backed into a corner of the wall, sliding down. For the first time in 15 years, a radiant smile, mingled with tears, bloomed on his face. Amidst the loud medical commotion, his lips moved, calling out a word he had refused to utter for all those years. "Dad, I'm sorry." 8 months later. Summer in suburban Oak Park brought patches of brilliant golden sunlight filtering through the maple leaves. On the porch of the white-painted wooden mansion, a gentle breeze caressed the blooming hydrangeas. "Grandpa, look at me." Mia, in a little floral dress smudged with mud, was holding up a hand-folded paper butterfly, running around the lawn. Sitting neatly in a wheelchair on the porch was William Hayes. His hair had turned completely white, his face still bearing the marks of time and the life-or-death surgery, but his eyes had never been so bright and peaceful. He smiled, kindly nodded, and spoke in a voice that was a bit slow but warm. "My granddaughter is the best artist." From inside the house, Nathan walked out with 2 glasses of iced lemon tea. He wore a simple t-shirt and comfortable jeans, no longer a trace of the cold, stressed-out CEO from days past. The trust fund had saved his firm, putting everything back on track. But the greatest asset he managed to keep wasn't sitting in a bank. Nathan set the tea down on the small table next to Will. He said nothing, simply pulling up a rattan chair and sitting down right beside his father. Father and son both watched little Mia humming "You Are My Sunshine" on the grass. All the injustices, all the curses, all the 1,000-mile distances in the past had vanished under the rain that day. There was no need for grandiose words of gratitude. The darkness had retreated behind them, making way for a brilliantly sunny afternoon, where a father finally returned to his rightful place, the safest, most eternal, and most radiant harbor in his son's life. Although that peaceful moment on the porch under the summer sun was a picture-perfect destination, the path from the freezing ICU room to that laughter-filled yard was by no means easy. Healing is never an overnight miracle. It is a painful journey of patching things back together. 2 weeks after Will opened his eyes, his condition finally stabilized enough to be extubated. At the same time, Nathan's legal battle entered its most fierce stage. At the FBI's Chicago field office, Nathan sat across from Special Agent Miller, the lead investigator on his firm's fraud case. On the desk lay a thick stack of documents related to Marcus, the partner who had absconded with the funds. "You are very lucky, Mr. Hayes." Agent Miller flipped through the trust's bank statement, his eyes revealing clear astonishment. The IRS scrutinized every single penny in this irrevocable trust. All $650,000 is clean money. Money from blood donation centers, janitor wages, medical trial compensations. The grantor calculated the legal airtightness so perfectly that even if the federal court wanted to freeze your assets, we couldn't touch this money. Nathan clenched his hands, resting on his thighs. Every single one of those clean receipts was a scar on his father's body. With the $50,000 retainer legally dispersed from the trust, your lawyer provided sufficient alibis, proving you had no knowledge of Marcus's illicit transactions. Miller continued, tapping his pen on the desk. An international arrest warrant was issued. We just apprehended Marcus at the airport in Cancun, Mexico. This morning, the freeze on your firm is lifted. You are free. Free. The word echoed lightly, but its weight made Nathan want to burst into tears. His elite status, his beloved architectural firm, and Mia's home, all were salvaged by pennies soaked in sweat and blood from the wretched trailer park he had once despised. There was no need for a bloody act of revenge. The downfall of the traitor Marcus before the law, and Nathan's absolute safety, were the execution of the most perfect, silent justice. A few days later, Nathan transferred Will from the hospital to the most exclusive rehabilitation center in Chicago. For the first time in years, Nathan personally shaved his father. The razor blade glided over the deep wrinkles on Will's cheeks. The room was silent, save for the fizzling sound of shaving cream. Will looked at the reflection of his tall son in the small mirror, his eyes hesitant, seemingly still unable to believe this was real. "You don't have to do this, Nathan," Will spoke in a weak, raspy voice. "I can do it myself. The nurses here get paid to do this." Nathan paused, taking a warm towel and gently wiping the foam off his father's face. He looked directly into his eyes through the mirror. They get paid. I do it because I want to. 20 years ago, you did my part for me. Now, it's my turn. A month and a half later, Will was discharged. Instead of sending him back to the slums, Nathan had Will's belongings packed up, which barely filled 2 cardboard boxes, and brought him straight to the Oak Park mansion. On his first day, stepping into the luxurious oak-paneled house, Will appeared as awkward as a sinner trespassing into a sanctuary. He stood frozen on the welcome mat, not daring to step inside for fear his worn-out shoes would soil the polished wooden floor. It wasn't until little Mia, with her pure innocence and radiant smile, ran out, threw her arms around his legs and yelled, "Grandpa, Daddy bought you the bestest bed in the whole wide world," that the final layer of defensive ice in Will truly melted. However, even though their current life was peaceful, a ghost from the past still lingered between father and son, a psychological knot Nathan had yet to untangle himself. Catherine. Ever since reading that police report, Nathan had taken down all photos of his mother from the mantelpiece and locked them in the storage room. He didn't know how to face the memory of her. The image of the superhero mom had crumbled, making way for resentment. She had let an innocent man endure a prison sentence and the contempt of his own son for 2 decades. Late one night, as Nathan was lighting a cigarette on the balcony, Will rolled his wheelchair to the glass door. "You're smoking too much, Nathan," Will said gently. Nathan hastily crushed the cigarette into the ashtray. He walked closer, crouching down to eye level with his father. A suffocating silence dragged on for a few seconds before Nathan spoke. His voice choked. "I put all her pictures away. I can't look at her face anymore. Every time I think about her living peacefully, while I worshipped her, while letting you rot in prison and the slums, I hate her dad. She was a hypocrite." "No, Nathan. Don't ever say that." Will's expression instantly turned stern. His veiny hands reached out, gripping his son's shoulders tightly. "That is why I plan to take this secret to my grave. I didn't want you to hate your mother. But what she did was a crime." Nathan bit his lip, tears brimming. "What she did was the panic of someone suffering from a mental illness." Will sighed, his gaze drifting into the night. "That year, your mother was severely depressed. Losing her job and the financial pressure pushed her into abusing sedatives and alcohol. That night, when the accident happened, she panicked to the point where she almost bit her tongue off to kill herself right there in the driver's seat." Will paused, swallowing hard. "If I had let the police arrest her, she would have died in prison, and you, a 12-year-old kid, would have been thrown into the foster system. I was an uneducated mechanic. Even if I were on the outside, I'd have lost custody of you because my income wasn't enough. The only solution at the time was to let your mother keep a clean record. Your mom didn't force me. I volunteered to switch places." Nathan stared blankly at his father. He realized Will's sacrifice wasn't just an impulsive act to save his wife, but a profoundly rational and desperate calculation by a father to fully protect his son's world. She was at fault, yes, but in the years that followed, she worked herself to exhaustion, juggling 3 jobs at once just to put you through school and make you successful. Your mother used her very life to atone for her mistake that night. Will gently stroked Nathan's hair, which was beginning to show traces of gray. "I sacrificed my honor, and your mother sacrificed her life. Everything was for you. Don't let our sacrifices turn into hatred, Nathan. Forgive her, son." A teardrop fell from Nathan's eyes onto the rough back of his father's hand. The final spike of resentment lodged in his heart was completely uprooted. With unimaginably profound grace, Will Hayes didn't just save his son from bankruptcy, but he also salvaged his soul and his childhood memories. That night, Nathan returned to the storage room and quietly brought his mother's photos back to the mantelpiece. He realized that this world harbors no perfect saints, only deeply flawed human beings who loved him with the greatest love of all. 1 year after the severe illness. The third Sunday of June, Father's Day. The air in suburban Oak Park was crystal clear, carrying the faint scent of freshly cut grass and pine wood. Under the shade of the old oak tree, in the middle of the yard, William Hayes sat on a stool, patiently teaching little Mia how to use sandpaper to smooth the edges of a wooden birdhouse. His scar-riddled hands no longer had to grip a mop or clutch a blood donation cot. They were now performing the most sacred duty of a grandfather, forging unblemished childhood memories for his granddaughter. From the porch, Nathan leaned against the railing, holding 2 hot cups of coffee, quietly watching the scene. His heart was overflowing with a kind of peace he hadn't tasted in all his 32 years. Nathan walked over, handing a coffee to Will. "Take a break, Dad, Mia. Go inside and wash your hands. We're having cake soon." The little girl obeyed, skipping merrily into the house. Only the 2 men remained. Nathan sat down on the grass next to his father, pulling a thick craft paper envelope from his breast pocket. Will looked at the envelope, a hint of confusion in his eyes. He still wasn't entirely used to receiving gifts from the son he once thought he had lost forever. "Open it, Dad," Nathan smiled encouragingly. Will's rough hands carefully peeled open the flap. Inside wasn't a standard Father's Day card, but a document packet bearing the embossed seal of the state of Illinois. The capitalized letters on the first page struck his eyes. Certificate of Incorporation for a nonprofit organization, the William Hayes Hope Foundation. Will looked up at his son, his lips trembling, unable to utter a word. After settling the firm's case and paying the fines, your trust still had over $500,000 left. Nathan took a deep breath, his voice deep and warm but resolute. "I have no right to use the money traded with your blood and dignity to buy supercars or invest in stocks. I transferred the entire amount into this foundation." Will looked down at the paper, tears beginning to well up in the deeply lined corners of his eyes. "What is this foundation for?" "To provide scholarships for children whose parents are incarcerated so they don't fall into the foster care system, and to help men with felony records get a chance at decent jobs instead of having to work night shifts in toxic environments." Nathan grasped his father's hand, squeezing it tight. "You spent your whole life, sacrificed everything to protect my world. Now, let me use your name, use your greatness, to protect the worlds of others." Will burst into tears. For the first time in his life, the man who had shouldered an unjust conviction for 2 decades wept aloud. Every ounce of pain, every sneer of contempt, every humiliation he had swallowed over the past 20 years had finally borne fruit. He threw his arms around Nathan, burying his tear-soaked face into his son's shoulder. Thank you, Nathan." "No, Dad." Nathan held tightly onto his frail shoulders. "I'm the one who has to thank you. Thank you for never giving up on me." The Oak Park sky faded into a brilliant sunset, casting golden streaks of sunlight over the 2 silhouettes, leaning against each other beneath the old oak tree. There is an old saying, any man can be a father, but it takes a real man to be a dad. Throughout the impulsive and prideful years of my youth, I mistakenly believed that a father's legacy to his children was massive houses, bottomless bank accounts, or a spotless name to flaunt in society. I built a perfect facade, refusing to call the man who gave me life father, simply because he didn't fit that glamorous definition. But life taught me a costly lesson through the most brutal and agonizing truth. The most colossal legacy my father left behind was not a $650,000 trust fund. His true fortune lay in those blood-selling receipts, in the lattice of scars on his hands, and in the profound silence as he willingly let the whole world, including his own flesh and blood, curse him, as long as that child got to live in the light. The love of parents isn't always wrapped in beautiful gift boxes or sweet words. Sometimes, it is tying oneself into the darkness to hand the only way out to their child. It is patiently keeping the porch light on, waiting for the day the lost child stumbles and finds their way back. If my family story reminds you of anything, I hope it is empathy. Do not be quick to judge silences, and do not let the pride of youth strip away your chance to understand the quiet sacrifices made behind your back. The safest place in life is not a sturdy house or a secure bank account. The safest place is knowing for certain that, no matter how terribly you mess up, there will always be someone willing to use their own body as a shield so you can start over. My name is Nathan Hayes, and the greatest honor of my life is getting to call William Hayes my dad.